It's basically that set of principles, standards, codes of conduct for professional journalists. It's the framework for ethical decision making, helping them navigate the complexities of the job, uphold integrity.
And our sources trace the history of this, highlighting the emergence of concerns about unethical practices, like yellow journalism, which was all about sensationalism and profit,
Yeah.
not accuracy or fairness.
Yeah, it shows that even in a profession built on truth and integrity, the pursuit of profit, the pressure to compete, can push people to compromise ethically. But thankfully, a set of core principles has emerged.
What are some of those?
Well, accuracy is huge. Making sure the information is factually correct, verified from reliable sources. Then there's fairness, presenting ALL sides of the story, giving everyone involved a chance to respond.
Letting the facts speak, letting the audience form their own informed opinion without being swayed by bias.
Exactly. And independence is crucial. Reporting has to be free from outside pressure, whether it's from governments, corporations, anyone with a vested interest. It's maintaining journalistic integrity, resisting any attempts to manipulate or control the story.
And then there's truth itself. Seeking it out, even when it's uncomfortable, controversial, takes courage to speak truth to power, even when there's a personal or professional cost. That's the essence of ethical journalism.
It absolutely is. And minimizing harm is important too. Reporting can have a huge impact on people's lives, reputations. Journalists have to be sensitive to that, take steps to avoid causing unnecessary harm.
And accountability. Being transparent about your sources, methods, correcting errors, acknowledging mistakes, building trust with the public, showing commitment to ethical, responsible journalism.
Our sources even give a case study, though they don't name names, about a media mogul who fell from grace because of ethical breaches. Shows that even the most powerful figures can face consequences when they act unethically.
A cautionary tale, for sure. Now, shifting gears again, let's talk about ethics in business, corporate governance.
This is where making money often clashes with ethical considerations. Our sources stress that while profit is a legitimate goal, it shouldn't come at the expense of ethical conduct. It's about finding the balance, making money while upholding ethical principles.
It's recognizing that businesses aren't just responsible to their shareholders, but to a wider group: employees, customers, suppliers, the community. That's where corporate governance comes in, ensuring corporations act ethically, responsibly, in the best interests of all those stakeholders.
Exactly. Our sources highlight some key principles: transparency, fairness, accountability, integrity. Transparency means companies openly share information about their operations, finances, governance practices. Fairness means treating everyone equitably, respectfully.
Accountability means leaders are held responsible for their decisions, and integrity means operating honestly, transparently, committed to ethical principles.
Right. And they even suggest specific ways to establish a code of conduct for business integrity. Clearly articulating ethical expectations, having both rules to follow and aspirations to strive for, with top leadership setting the example.
It's about creating a culture of ethics within the organization, where ethical conduct is valued, rewarded, part of every decision.
They suggest incorporating ethics into hiring, performance reviews, even having ethics counselors to give guidance on ethical issues, and crucially, acting swiftly and decisively when someone does act unethically, showing that it won't be tolerated.
Sending a clear message. Ethical conduct is non-negotiable. Everyone's responsible for upholding those standards.
And they address the tricky issue of gifts and hospitality, recognizing that sometimes those are used to disguise bribery, corruption. They suggest having clear guidelines for what's acceptable to avoid even the appearance of impropriety.
Setting clear boundaries, making sure business relationships are conducted with integrity, transparency.
And encouraging employees to speak up if they see ethical violations. Providing ways to report concerns without fear of retaliation.
Empowering employees to be ethical watchdogs, contributing to a culture of accountability.
They also highlight having mechanisms for resolving ethical dilemmas like ethics committees or ombudsmen, ensuring concerns are addressed fairly, impartially.
Creating a system where ethical issues can be discussed openly, resolved effectively, fostering ethical awareness, responsibility within the organization.
Now, shifting to a global scale, our sources delve into ethics in international relations.
This is where it gets really complex, right? Different countries, different values, laws, ways of doing things. How do we navigate that ethically?
Our sources emphasize developing a global ethical framework, one that recognizes how interconnected all nations are, the need for cooperation, mutual respect.
Recognizing we're all part of one global community, our actions have consequences beyond our own borders.
And they highlight Upholding universal human rights, ensuring everyone, no matter where they're from, is treated with dignity, respect.
Recognizing that some values, like human rights, go beyond national lines, we have a moral obligation to uphold those values globally.
And they point out that ethical challenges in international relations often come from conflicting interests, economic, political, ideological. Navigating those ethically requires dialogue, diplomacy, willingness to find common ground.
Recognizing that there are multiple perspectives, finding solutions that are both ethical and effective requires understanding, respecting those different viewpoints, and they highlight international cooperation in tackling global challenges, things like poverty, climate change, terrorism.
No one nation can solve these alone. We have to work together, share resources, knowledge to create a more just, sustainable, peaceful world.
And that takes commitment to ethical principles, right? Fairness, cooperation, recognizing our shared humanity. Now, our sources look at ethical implications of specific foreign policy decisions those dilemmas leaders face.
They use the example of military intervention. Deciding to get involved in another country militarily raises complex ethical questions. The use of force, protecting civilians, the potential consequences.
A decision that can't be taken lightly, right? Requires carefully weighing the benefits and risks, both for the intervening country and the country being intervened in. And they also talk about the ethics of economic sanctions, often used to pressure countries to change their behavior.
But sanctions can have unintended consequences, hurting innocent civilians, hindering economic development. It's crucial to weigh the potential good against the potential harm, and to look for other approaches whenever possible.
It's recognizing that foreign policy decisions have real-world impact. We have a moral obligation to consider how our actions affect others, and our sources highlight ethical leadership in international relations.
Leaders have a responsibility to uphold those principles in how they interact with other countries, acting with integrity, honesty, commitment to the common good, being accountable to their own citizens, and to the global community.
It's about recognizing that ethical leadership isn't just doing what's easy or politically advantageous. It's doing the right thing, even when it's hard. And recognizing that our actions on the world stage have huge impact, we have a moral obligation to act ethically, responsibly. Now let's turn to environmental ethics. As we deal with climate change, other environmental challenges, it's crucial to think about the ethical side of our relationship with nature.
Absolutely. Our sources emphasize that environmental ethics explores our moral obligations to the environment and to all the non-human beings that live in it. It's recognizing that we're part of a giant ecosystem. Our actions affect the health of the planet and all its inhabitants.
They highlight several key principles of environmental ethics, things like the inherent value of nature, the interconnectedness of all living things, and our responsibility to protect the environment for future generations.
It's about recognizing that the environment is not just some resource to be exploited, but a complex web of life that we depend on for our survival.
Right, we're all connected. They also discuss the concept of ecological footprint, how our consumption patterns impact the environment.
It's about realizing that all our individual choices, from what we eat to how we travel, they all add up and have an impact.
And they emphasize sustainable living, consuming responsibly, minimizing our impact.
Living within our means, planet-wise, finding ways to meet our needs without messing things up for future generations.
Makes sense. They talk about different approaches to conservation, too. The preservationist approach, which is about protecting wilderness areas from human interference, and the conservationist approach, which advocates for sustainable use of natural resources.
It's a debate about finding that balance, right? Human needs versus environmental needs. How can both thrive?
It's a tough one. And our sources point out that environmental ethics isn't just about those pristine wilderness areas. It's also about environmental justice in cities, industrialized areas.
Absolutely. Recognizing that marginalized communities often bear the brunt of environmental damage, so solutions need to be both sustainable and socially just.
Right. Fairness is key. They also highlight environmental education, raising awareness, empowering people to make informed choices that are good for them and the planet.
It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play. Our collective actions can make a difference. Now, let's switch gears a bit and talk about something maybe a little unexpected. Ethics of food.
Food. How does that tie into ethics?
Well, our food choices have consequences. They affect our health, the environment, animal welfare, even the livelihoods of farmers and food producers globally.
It's like even something as simple as going to the grocery store can have ethical implications.
Exactly. Our sources talk about this growing awareness of ethical food consumption. More and more people are thinking about the impact of what they eat.
We see that with veganism, vegetarianism,
Mm,
the focus on local organic food.
absolutely. And they dig into some of the big ethical issues around food. Factory farming, for example, raising animals in those cramped, often inhumane conditions.
Raises questions about animal welfare, the use of antibiotics, hormones, the environmental impact of all that concentrated livestock.
Exactly. And they also look at genetically modified organisms, GMOs, the potential benefits, A&D risks, and concerns about corporations controlling the food supply.
Definitely a complex issue with strong opinions on all sides.
And they discuss food waste, a massive global problem with huge economic, social, and environmental consequences.
We need to be more mindful, reduce waste, make sure food is distributed more fairly.
For sure. And our sources emphasize food sovereignty, the right of people to define their own food systems.
It's about taking back control, supporting local farmers, promoting sustainable and fair food systems. Now let's move on to something super relevant in our digital age, cyber ethics.
This is all about how we interact online, how we use technology ethically.
Basically, the same ethical principles that guide us in the real world should apply online too.
Right. The internet has opened up amazing opportunities for communication, collaboration, creativity, but it also presents new ethical challenges.
Think cyberbullying, harassment, misinformation, privacy violations, cybercrime, all that stuff.
Exactly. So our sources highlight the importance of being responsible, ethical online.
Creating a culture of respect, empathy, accountability in the digital space.
They talk about online etiquette, respecting other people's opinions, avoiding offensive language, being mindful of the impact of our words. Even if it feels anonymous, online interactions can have real-world consequences.
They also emphasize protecting our privacy online, being careful about what information we share, using strong passwords, being aware of the risks.
Absolutely. Protecting ourselves from things like identity theft, cyberstalking.
And they discuss intellectual property online, respecting copyright, avoiding plagiarism.
Recognizing that creative work is protected, we have to use and share content ethically.
It's not just grabbing whatever we want off the internet. They also talk about critical thinking online, evaluating sources, being skeptical of those clickbaity headlines, not spreading misinformation.
We have to be savvy, realize that not everything we see online is true.
Right, be discerning consumers of information. And they encourage using technology for good, using its power to connect with people, raise awareness, promote positive change.
It's a tool like any other. It can be used for good or bad. It's up to us to use it wisely, ethically. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about sports ethics. Some people might think it's a trivial topic, but it's actually pretty important.
Sports are more than just games, right? They reflect our values, they're like a mini version of society. And just like any other field, there are ethical challenges in sports too.
We see it all the time. Performance-enhancing drugs, match-fixing, violence, aggression on the field.
It's a reminder that ethical principles matter in sports, both on and off the field.
They talk about sportsmanship, playing with integrity, win or lose, respecting the rules, your opponents, the spirit of the game.
It's not about winning at all costs. It's about competing fairly, honorably, showing teamwork, discipline, resilience.
Respecting your opponents, acknowledging their skill and effort, no trash talking or bad behavior.
Recognizing that even though they're your opponents, they're still fellow athletes, deserving of respect.
And fair play is huge. Sticking to the rules, no cheating, no taking unfair advantage.
It's about maintaining the integrity of the game. Winning by cheating just cheapens the victory.
And our sources also talk about the ethical responsibilities of coaches, sports organizations, creating a culture of ethics, making sure athletes are trained not just to win, but to compete ethically, responsibly.
And being role models.
Yeah.
Coaches and athletes demonstrating ethical behavior on and off the field.
It's important because, especially at the professional level, athletes are often role models for young people. Their actions have a ripple effect.
So we've covered a lot today. Ethics is everywhere, affecting all aspects of our lives.
From personal choices to global issues, technology, the environment, food, even sports. We've seen how ethical considerations are woven into everything we do. It's been quite a journey.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up, I think it's important to remember that ethics isn't just something we study, it's something we live. It's about making those choices, big and small, that reflect our values, our commitment to a better world.
Couldn't have had it better myself.
Yeah.
It's about constantly striving to be our best selves, in every aspect of our lives.
Well, that's it for our deep dive into ethics. We hope you found it informative, thought-provoking, maybe even inspiring. Thanks for joining us.
And remember, keep asking those tough questions, keep challenging yourselves, and keep striving to make the world a more ethical place.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives. Until next time, keep exploring.